Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending today's session. We're covering Media Composer. This is one of our series we're calling Ask Marianne. This is going to be volume 1. So we're very happy to have with us Marianne Post, who's one of our Avid master instructors. She also writes a lot of the content for those that go through some of our courses. We'll go ahead and go through our quick housekeeping items. As most of you know, if you're following us on the Zoom session itself, the webinar is being recorded and your audio is muted. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A panel. Raise your hand if you have an issue. I'll try to come to you separately and resolve your issue for you. Your recorded sessions will be posted back at avid.com, so you can go back and take a look at those later. Also, if you're watching us on the social feeds, let us know where you're watching us from, and I will try to monitor as many feeds as possible to get some of these questions over to Marianne. So as we know, like I said, Marianne's one of our great Avid master instructors. We're so glad to have her for this series to answer some of the questions that we've been having come in from the webinars. So Marianne, we're so happy to have you today in this session. And we have a lot of questions. So are you ready for all of these?
I'm all ready. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. And yep, as it said on the slide, we're doing Q&A today. So I curated questions from previous sessions I've done and from social media, and we'll see how many we get through. And Dawn's going to go ahead and ask them, and I'm going to answer them. So I'm going to jump right into sharing my screen.
All right, we'll let you get your Media Composer ready to go. Here we are.
Okay.
So the first question coming in is for, let's see. How do you track shape objects related to how do you track a corner pin?
Okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so I've done several effects sessions, and in both of them did movement with shapes and that kind of thing. So the question of how do you track these came up, and we didn't have time to answer it. So here we go. So you can track 3D warp, you can track several effects in your image category, like a blur effect or a mosaic. And the scenario I have loaded on my right screen, which I'll make bigger in a moment, is we need to blur the faces, the classic blurring a logo, blurring a face. I'm going to go for the paint effect because it has both the blur and the mosaic baked in. And then I'll set it up and do some tracking with this. So I'm going to pop into my effects view here and do a little bit of resizing, try to make this as big as possible for you guys. So tip number 1, you can either track first or build your shape first. I actually like to build my shapes first and then track. And regardless, you want to build your shapes on the first frame of the video. So I'm just gonna, for this is gonna be sloppy. I'm just gonna go ahead and draw a couple of ovals. Okay, so it takes a moment to get these put together, but there we go. And then I'm gonna switch my mode to be mosaic or blur. So you'll see if, as I go down my list here, here's mosaic, here's blur, so if you change your mind. So I'm just gonna go with a mosaic here. And then you can do like blurring and all that good stuff. For tracking, I'm gonna go ahead and set up some tracking data and then assign it to my shapes. So I'm gonna click the tracking tool on the right side of the effects editor. That's going to open that up. So I'm going to have 1 point by default. I'm going to need 2, 1 for each face. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Setup Tracker, Create New Tracker button. So hopefully you guys can see my cursor as I'm moving around here. And then I'm going to set these up. Now I'm working in HD, full raster HD. So the tracking setup's pretty forgiving. So for speed, I'm just going to put these over their faces. And you'll see in the second example that it won't be quite as forgiving. But yeah, otherwise you'd want to like zoom in, use your Command K, or sorry, Command L, Control L on Windows, and then Command Option, Control Alt to zoom around and get these more precise. right, so I've got my tracking all set up. Okay. And then let's go ahead and track it, see what happens. So I'm just basically watching to follow, make sure it's following their faces. So because it's not such a precise shape, it will definitely be pretty forgiving. You can see it followed them really, really well. So then if I go to the proper pop-up menu, effects results, we'll see that it's not tracking at all because I haven't assigned it to my shapes. So that's the next piece of this, and my zoom controls are hiding what I need. There we go. Okay, so I'm back in the effects editor, and notice I have no trackers. So this is either where you assign them or you draw your shapes. So since I've already drawn my shapes, I'm going to go ahead and click the face on the left, and that's going to be for tracker point A. And I'm just going to call up track point A, and then make sure it's turned on. And then I'm going to click the one on the right and choose track point B. Okay. And then now, especially if I deselect here, we'll see that they are tracking. Okay. The lady on the left, she doesn't really move towards the camera, so she's fine. Notice that the lady on the right does. This is where you just kind of go in and start fine tuning your shape. I'll click the last keyframe and fine tune the trackers I need. My super messy mosaic. But there you go. You can either create your shapes ahead of time and then build your trackers, or track and then build your shapes. The key is clicking the shapes, going into the tracking data, and calling up the proper points individually. Okay, so you don't have to do it in separate passes, separate effects, or anything like that, all in one. Okay. The second part of the question with a corner pin is a little bit more involved. That came up in 2 sessions this year. So here's the scenario. It's the classic, we want to pin an image to a mobile device, smart device. And in this case, we have a vertical phone. So this is the base layer. And then this, the lady is speaking with her grandmother, who she calls Mima. So that's layer 2. And then layer 3 is actually a mat of this, which I'll talk about why we have a mat of this in the end. So as you can see, when I turn on the animat, which is just a cutout of the phone, the framing's not great. So we're going to go ahead and resize and then track some corners. Okay. So pop in effects mode here. Due to time, I've got some of this set up. So I'm going to go ahead and monitor V2 here on the left. So I'm monitoring V2. If I just slap on a 3D warp, so you can see that's a 3D warp up here, it's just a full frame. Now you don't want to pop into corner pin and just start pinning this, because if you do, it's going to get distorted. Okay, so what you want to do is use your other features like a scale, so you can maintain your aspect ratio and your perspective and align it with a perspective through scale, rotation, and position. Now this takes a moment to align it with a shape layer below. So I've got this pretty much set up. So what I did was cropped it, so it's kind of cropped to that vertical shape to kind of see here's what we're going to view, so that we don't make Mima look really, really thin and distorted. And then it's scaled so we could see more of her. It's not just her face and her eyes. Then rotated, okay, to get that perspective, because otherwise it'd be straight on. She's rotating the phone, so you want to see that natural rotation. And then it's positioned over the phone. Now, when you're building this, you'll also probably want to take down your opacity. So with the opacity lowered, and you can even lower it more than it is right now, it's at about 75%. With the opacity lowered, you can really see where you're working and that kind of thing. So you get kind of the best of both worlds to create your perspective. So that's the trick with that. You don't want to just automatically go for corner pinning. Now, if this were a stationary image, I would finish it with a corner pin. But because if I scrub through, you can see the phone behind moves quite a bit. It's pretty subtle when you play back, but it does have movement. So what I'm going to do, I also want to make this just a little bit bigger here. So what I'm going to do is track the corners, okay? And so once again, I'm going to go into tracking, but I'm going to go ahead and enable this in the corner pin tracking parameter group. Okay, so when I do that, when I enable it, it auto adds those 4 trackers, so I don't have to do the setup here. And you want to pretty much, big tip, you want to keep them in the order you see, meaning I don't want to drag the yellow one down to the lower right because it's going to flop and distort your image. So I want to keep the yellow one upper left, green upper right, and so forth. And you can rename all these. So I could call this like upper left, if I remember directions and so forth. All right, that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is you don't have to track at the corners. When I teach this in class with similar images, I'll show that like if it's not a good tracking point, your corner pin is going to move. So it's going to be obvious, reveal your magic. So let's take a look at where good points are. So I'm going to hold on my command key here and zoom in. So control on Windows allows you to zoom into a specific spot. So this one I could go to the corner, or you can see there's all these nice little dots. I can also pick one of those. So some of these you can go right to the corners, and then others it's not going to work out as well. I'm holding down Command and Option, by the way, to scroll around. It's kind of like spacebar in the Adobe world. All right, so I'm going to find, and what I'm looking for is nice high contrast. This one I could probably do the corner as well. Okay, I will tell you that if I choose this corner, it doesn't work because the contrast is not high enough and the difference in the detail isn't great. So because I've already got my shape already set in parameters that are processed later, I have the luxury of tracking like a scratch on the phone. So I can track that. And then on this side, same idea. I've done it where this tracks okay, but because I don't have to, I'm going to pick a nice high contrast, more contrast point there. All right, because what's determining the shape here isn't the corner pin, it's all the parameters below. So this is more forgiving. I don't have to go in and manually adjust points later. All right, so I'm going to zoom all the way out here. I'm going to use Command Option K, Control Alt K. So there's my setup. And then we'll track. Let's see how I did. And basically, I don't want to see the little targets jumping off. And so far, so good. And then there's all my tracking points. And then if I go to the final, oops, I'm clicking the wrong menu again. Here we go. To the final effects results. It stays. All right. So there you go for the corner pin. Now, if you have a pretty basic square rectangle, you might get it in the corners perfect. Otherwise, that's where the animat's going to come into play. So let me just zoom in one more time up here. If you notice right here on the corner, it's not right at the edge of the phone. So that's where we cut out a mat of the phone shape to get that to work. Now it's not a line. Let me go to the first frame. So once the mat, so off is set up, it will conceal everything that comes off the edges of the phone. Okay, so that's why there's a mat. And it goes back to tracking shapes with a really neat little trick that I'm going to show you guys. All right, so let's take a look at how this was structured a bit because this took a moment as well. So I'm going to Command Option K and Control Alt K on Windows. So with my mat effect, it's a cutout, and if I double click my shape to go to the points, you'll see that there's a lot of points at the top and the bottom because of the details of the phone. It's not just a straight screen. There's a bit of an overlap because of the case that she's using. So that's been cut out. If you have a nice rectangle, of course, that's ideal. So we've got that, but of course, this moves. So you can see the phone moving, but not the shape. Okay. And by the way, if you're feeling a little confused with the perspective, I'm going to solo V3 a moment, and you'll see that's what's being cut out. So there's the mat because the animat is key out, key in. Okay. what I want to do is copy the tracking data from the corner pin to the animat effect. All right. So if I go back to animat a second on solo here, and let's find, let's go into tracking data. So if I look at the tracking data for the animat, there's nothing there. If I go here, lots of stuff. All you do is you call up your tracker, which I grabbed from the right side of my effects editor, right click in the track region and copy enabled tracks. So you don't even have to do all of them. Guys, if I needed one of the shapes when I was mosaicing the two faces, you turn off what you don't want to grab. So I'm going to grab all these. And then I'm going to go to the matte layer. So you just cut it out, right click, paste tracks right here in the tracking window. And there we go. Now I need to make sure I enable it. Okay. And they've done some interface updating here. So I need to get my view adjusted a little bit here. I can't grab this yet. Hopefully that feature is coming next. Because I have not enabled this yet, I got to go to tracking and make sure I select my shape, just like I did with the mosaic, and click all these. And there we go. And voila. Tracked in a shape and a matte. And there you go. That's how you track corners. Generally, I'm not using corner pin, very little corner pinning for something like this. Okay. All right, so there's that one. What do we have up next?
We have another question coming in for how do you make an edit when nesting?
Yep. Okay. So this goes back to a session that I did with 3D warp and then nesting and that kind of thing. And the director here would like me to replace this shot. This shot happens to be on V4. Okay, so an easy way to do the edit is to go into expand and nest, and all I'm doing to do that is double clicking the V4 layer. Okay, and then load my shot, which I have a shot here. I think it's this one actually. Nope, it's the top one. Okay, so they want a wider angle. They want to see more of the dancers instead of the tight shot of the singer. So then you just edit like you normally would. I'm just going to mark this clip, okay, and then overwrite to replace. And I just want to make sure that I'm replacing in the nest, so I do need to patch. Okay, my system's stuck there for a second. Okay, so I just clicked and dragged from V4 up to V1.2 to replace. Make sure you mark your nest so that you don't end up getting long clips that can disrupt things down the road in your timeline. So I'll overwrite, and there we go. Now I'm going to undo that, Command Z, Control Z on Windows. One tip, if you're debating between shots and you don't want to have to go back and find this shot and re-edit it or flag it somehow, you can actually take it out before you do the edit. So I'm going to grab my arrow, my red tool, and I'm just going to drag upwards, and it's going to drag it to a V5. Or you can create another track. So like I'll do the Command Option Y and say do like the classic, because there used to only be 24 video tracks. We do the classic, put all your placeholder effect elements on V24. So I actually still do that. Control Alt Y on Windows, by the way. So I could have, oh, and I put it inside my nest because I didn't have the right thing selected. But when I do this, just grab a random number here. I can pop that up, and by doing a higher track number, I know it's not part of the composite. But now when I pull this out, I can edit the clip in the same way, or use simple nesting display. Okay, so now this is a filler track. If I click step in at the bottom of my timeline here, hopefully you guys can see that. This is empty because it's just a placeholder with filler, and it's the same idea. I can patch, mark in the timeline, T key, and then overwrite. So once you're stepped in, everything looks the same as it does when you're building a story. So two options, so step out, step in, and then there you go. So then if they're like, oh no, I don't care for that, go with the other shot, because I have my magic, well, now it's V5 still because of I did the V24 after this example, I can just double click and then bring this down. Okay, and I've replaced that. And then the comparison kind of becomes a Command Z, Command R situation to compare the two. So there's a little trick for you in addition to how do you edit inside a nest. Do we have time for other questions? This has gone really fast.
We do. We have some more nesting questions, but then I also
Okay.
we just received a question pertaining to what you were working on right now, and it says, what do you suggest to handle a clip with several audio channels? Is it possible to group different channels of the same track in a different way by setting multi-track under the modified clip?
Yeah. I don't have a good example of that, so I may add this to the next session. But when I right click and modify clip, and then you go to the set multi-channel, this one doesn't even have any audio. So yeah, so this is why I prepare these. I don't have one right now that has audio on it. You can, but the thing is, it doesn't really, you don't really nest audio like you can nest video. The multi-channel, when you get to your 7-channel surround sound and that kind of thing, it's meant for, you've set this up as surround sound and that kind of thing. So I will make a note of that and re-answer that in a way better way in a future session, since I just picked the clip
in the next session.
No audio. Yeah.
All right, no worries. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No worries.
Okay. How do you make an edit? How do you make an edit when nest? Whoops, I already asked you that one. How do you shuffle around clips inside a nest?
Okay. Yeah, so I have a sequence here with lots of shots, and I just applied a super fast color effects here, a little magenta, a little desaturated. But you can see it's one clip with lots of shots, and that's because I auto nested all these clips into a color effect. So to shuffle them around, I have a couple of options. First of all, does this look too complex to me? Because like basically I have V1 here. There's some stacks of footage in other areas. So you can see like I've got that. And then on top of that, I have a matte because everyone wants that ultra widescreen look. So it's just a mask effect. So it really depends on your comfort zone. The easiest way, especially if you need to pay attention to where your music placement is to just double click the clip and it'll take you into nesting. And you don't even have to be in segment mode. I'm just getting ready for what I'm going to do next, which is use the yellow tool. And then I'm going to click the shot and rearrange it. So let's find one to rearrange. Like these guys, maybe they wanted to break up some action here. So break up this action and this action with this shot. So I can just click it and drag. And I like to hold down my command key to snap so I don't end up with any flash frames. You hold down your control key to snap in Windows. And I'm on the 4-frame display, and you'll see with the 4-frame display that I'm seeing 2 different shots on either side. If you're not seeing 2 different shots on the either side, you're running the risk of a flash frame or putting it in the middle of a shot, depending on what you need to do. But if you want to snap to edits, hold down that command key, control key, and then I let go. And I might have created a flash frame there. But there we go. I'm going to undo that just from the standpoint of if you prefer, I'm going to double click this to step in. Okay. Instead, you get the nice, simple display like a sequence you're used to. So it really kind of comes down to your comfort level and, what are you doing? I use both views. It really depends. Okay, so same idea. When I click and drag, you'll see the 4-frame display even better now. And then if I hold down my command key, it'll snap. I'm definitely between 2 edits. Let go. And I let go of my mouse or my case trackpad before command so I don't end up with any flashes and that kind of thing. So there you go, a couple of options for rearranging. You can trim, you can edit, you can nest further. So I've got like more nesting going on and rearrange. Nesting just groups effects. You can still fully edit, and I just click the step out button, okay, at the bottom there. All right. What else do we have? Do we have time for more?
All right. I think we have time for another one here.
Okay.
How do you return the timeline to normal after double tapping on the clip?
Okay. Yeah. So this, I've been using this already. But I like this question because I've worked with a lot of clients and students who are coming from other softwares where if you double click, you go into a different viewer and that kind of thing. So it's ingrained in your soul essentially. So you're constantly doing it here, and how do I get out of it and that kind of thing. You don't have to have a segment arrow selected. Anytime I double click a clip, it takes me into nests and reveals. To close it, it's always the bottom layer. So I'm into V1 here. So I just get the V1 level over on the left. When I double click, this comes down. You can also, which I'm not as good at it because I never use this, you can also just option step out. Will take you all the way out as well. I like double click because I don't have to find buttons or keys on my keyboard. So any of these that I double click on. Now, if that's happening a lot and you're like, oh, and don't want it to, you can change a timeline setting. So that's where I love this question. Right click timeline, or if you're in your timeline, command equals, control equals on Windows. Go to my timeline setting here. And in the display, my zoom controls have totally hid this. There we go. Let me move this over a little bit. There we go. There's double clicking to show nesting. If you don't want that to happen, so you can, for sanity's sake, turn that off. Now when I double click, well, it shouldn't be doing it. It looks like it's not working. Let me just double check that I didn't cancel, because it's very possible when I work fast, I cancel stuff. There we go. I canceled. Let's click OK instead. There we go. Now it's that. So now to step in, I have to use the option step in. So, but you won't have that annoyances all the time. So now I have to use option step in to expand and option step out. Okay. But yeah, just always when you're expanded, the double click is the bottom at the V1 level, not the nest level. Okay. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to turn this back on because it will drive me nuts the other way. There we go. Right. And
that just proves we're live, Marianne.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's see if we can get one more question in here. And then we'll also post how you can submit questions for your next session, which is coming up. So we'll share that information here very shortly. The next question coming in, can you share some timecode features?
Yeah, this one I may want to do a couple here and then a couple in the next session. Timecode can be a big topic. So I have a couple tips that I can share now, and then we'll go from there. First of all, I'm only seeing one row of information. I'm always looking at 2 rows of information. I just set this up this is what the default when you create a new user is. So I'm just going to right click and go to my composer settings. Command equals, control equals if you have the window active. And there's an option to always show 2 rows of data. This, by the way, if you like 2 rows of buttons, which I usually don't, but if you do, you can get it here as well. When I click OK, now I've got 2 rows. The big tip is if you're, I want this clip for this one. If you're going to navigate to timecode, you want the source timecode as the top field and not the bottom field. So for example, if I need to go to a specific timecode, if I have a numeric keypad, I can just start typing that in. I have to hit control twice because I'm on a keyboard. There it is. And then, so if I want to go to, like, let's say the 48-minute mark, I'll just type in 40. I hope it exists. 48 period, 2 periods will give me those seconds and frames. Okay, and I picked one that doesn't exist. I've lost my playhead up here. Something's happened with over Zoom here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So now I'm going to do 37 seconds instead. I don't need to type in 4 hours, 47 minutes, and 37 seconds. I can actually type in only what I need left. So in other words, the lead zeros don't have to be typed in. So I'm going to type in 37 period, and it'll take me there quite nicely. So you could do it if it was 48 minutes, which doesn't exist on this one, this clip. I type in 48 period. Pretty much not going to have to type in the hours generally. But on that point, if I change my top option to something other than current, or like the video time code, and now I try to do it, so like let's say I want to go to the 40-second mark, control twice for me, 40 period return, it's not going to go because it's the only thing it can go to is 321, and it won't go to that either, by the way. So you just want to make sure that you've got your source time code on the top field on the source side, and then on the master side, the timeline side as well, have master. And then after that, you can plug in whatever you want. And oftentimes I want remaining because I work on short form stuff, so I want to know how much time I have left. And then this one, I might do in to out and things like that. So I'm assuming that's next time. There's some things I want to talk about with center duration that you want to pay attention to, but we'll save that for the next volume of Ask Anything.
Yeah, so I'll say that for volume 2, which is coming up. Let me go ahead and share my screen for that so everyone can see it. Let me get this up there. So hopefully everyone is seeing that. Marianne, once again, thank you for these amazing sessions. I'm learning so much just watching them. December 1st, we have the Pro Tools Music Creation Workflows with Pro Tools 2020. And then Marianne's volume 2 is coming up December 8th. So if you have questions, yes, get us the questions, send them into liveonlinelearning@avid.com, and we'll get those over to Marianne so that she can have some material ready for everyone. And then feel free to go back and take a look at some of the sessions we also produce back at the avid.com page. And you can also see the upcoming calendar. We will be updating the rest of December and into January. Yay, 2021. Aren't we excited, Marianne?
Yes. Ready for a new year.
We're getting there.
Yes,
I hear you. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Marianne, once again, thank you. It's always informative having you do these sessions, and I'm looking forward to volume 2. So have a great afternoon, Marianne. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you guys later. Bye.